Hello, I'm Nicole Bishop, Director of Palm Beach County Victim Services. On August 16, 2016, the Board of County Commissioners directed staff to develop an expansion of training for county employees and community partners in an effort to combat human trafficking. Why, you may ask, did the county feel this was important? Human trafficking is our society's modern-day slavery, and it's happening all around us, even here in Palm Beach County. In fact, Florida has been recognized as having some of the highest incidents of human trafficking cases in the United States. While there are some general vulnerabilities that can make a person more susceptible to being a human trafficking victim, any person can be targeted. Human trafficking victims are hidden in plain sight, as they can look like your child, your neighbor, or anyone you could encounter in their community. Most people do not know what the signs are or what to do if they suspect it. This training video was developed to teach you about the crime of human trafficking, the prevalence, how to identify victims, and what the warning signs are. Most importantly, you will know how to make a report and what services are available. Together, Palm Beach County employees can become part of the solution to stop modern-day slavery. Thank you for doing your part.
My name is Monica Gonzalez, and I am a licensed therapist with Palm Beach County Victim Services. I work with victims of sexual assault and human trafficking.
My name is Tanya Mead, and I am the Vice President of and a trainer for the Human Trafficking Coalition of the Palm Beaches. The objective of this training is for you to learn about the crime of human trafficking, how to identify victims, recognize indicators and warning signs, how to make a report, and the services available to victims. When you think of human trafficking, what comes to mind? Maybe it's people being forced to do things against their will, being under someone's control, unpaid work, maybe it's chains. Kind of sounds like slavery, doesn't it? That's really what human trafficking is. A form of modern-day slavery. Slavery was abolished over 150 years ago, right? While it is true that slavery is illegal in every country on earth, the fact is that there are more slaves today than ever before in human history. The federal law outlines trafficking under two headings: sex trafficking and labor trafficking. Human trafficking is a crime against a person. It does not have to involve travel, transportation, or border crossings. Sex trafficking is defined as the recruitment, harboring, transportation, provision, obtaining, patronizing, or soliciting of a person for the purpose of a commercial sex act, in which the commercial sex act is induced by force, fraud, or coercion, or in which the person induced to perform such act has not attained 18 years of age. Anyone under the age of 18 performing a sex act in exchange for money or anything else of value, that could be housing, food, or consumer goods, is considered a victim of human trafficking. Force, fraud, or coercion does not have to exist. Labor trafficking is defined as the recruitment, harboring, transportation, provision, or obtaining of a person for labor or services through the use of force, fraud, or coercion for the purpose of subjection to involuntary servitude, peonage, debt bondage, or slavery. The Florida statute defines human trafficking as the transporting, soliciting, recruiting, harboring, providing, enticing, maintaining, or obtaining another person for the purpose of exploitation of that person. Human trafficking cases can be tried at the state and/or federal level. In order to be considered human trafficking for adults, there has to be some element of force, fraud, or coercion. What do we mean by force? That could be rape, beatings, confinement, physical restraints, torture, denying someone food or water, continuously moving the victim to an unfamiliar place, or inducing drug addiction. Fraud could be false offers of employment, promises of marriage, educational opportunities, fame, money, or a better life. Coercion could be threats of harm to victim or the victim's family members, debt bondage, economic abuse, abuse of the legal process, threat of arrest or deportation, intimidation and humiliation, blaming the victim for their trafficking situation, convincing the victim that the trafficker is the only one that really cares. Really, this is violence, lies, and threats.
Smuggling and trafficking are often used interchangeably, but there is a difference. So what's the difference? Smuggling involves transportation. The facilitation, transportation, attempted transportation, or illegal entry of a person or persons across an international border. They may or may not have a continued relationship with their smuggler or coyote after arriving in the destination country. The smuggled person generally consents and often pays a large sum of money. It is possible for a smuggled person to become a trafficking victim. Now, trafficking involves exploitation. It does not require the crossing of a border. It does not require the transportation of victims from one location to another. They do have a continued relationship with their trafficker, and it involves the elements of force, fraud, and/or coercion. So the best way to think about this is smuggling is a crime against a border and trafficking is a crime against a person. Okay, so here is a case example. Sonia was invited to come to the United States by family friends. She was told she could work as a housekeeper and they told her they would pay her $100 per week. Sonia was provided fraudulent documents and departed for the U.S. with her new employer. She knew she was undocumented, but she needed the money and was willing to take the risk. Was Sonia smuggled or trafficked? Sonia was smuggled into the United States. She left willingly with full knowledge that she was entering the United States undocumented. Case example number 2. Local law enforcement authorities executed a search warrant at a brothel and arrested 3 17-year-old girls for prostitution. The Department of Children and Families notified Department of Homeland Security investigations concerning the immigration status of the 3 girls. Were the girls smuggled or trafficked? The girls were trafficked into the United States. In cases where victims are age 17 and under, force, fraud, and/or coercion does not have to exist in commercial exploitation cases. Case example number 3. A woman from out of state was offered a free vacation to an amusement park by an acquaintance. She accepted the offer. Once she arrived, she was forced to have sex with strangers for money. Was she smuggled or trafficked? She was trafficked because she was lured to Florida fraudulently, then forced into prostitution. When we talk about victims of trafficking, who are we talking about? Here are some vulnerabilities that might make someone more susceptible to becoming a victim of human trafficking. Poverty, lack of education, poor employment opportunities, prior childhood abuse. And when we're talking about our youth, here are some vulnerabilities for them. Physical and sexual abuse, neglected, abandoned, and homelessness. Now that we have identified the victims, who are the traffickers? Anyone can be a trafficker just the way anyone can be a victim. Traffickers can be a one-person operation, a family enterprise, a loose network of criminals, a local gang, or a large-scale organized crime syndicate that operates internationally. There is no typical trafficker. While females comprise the majority of trafficked victims, the 2014 Global Report on Trafficking in Persons noted 30% of convicted traffickers worldwide between 2010 and 2012 were women. Some of the top venues and industries for trafficking are sex trafficking, agriculture, health and beauty, restaurants and food service, traveling sales crews, and domestic servitude.
Human trafficking is a clandestine crime, and victims are often hidden in plain sight and go unreported or unidentified. As a result, the statistics provided are based on patterns, ranges, and estimates. According to the International Labor Organization, trafficking is now estimated to be a $150 billion annual business. The International Labor Organization also estimates that 20.9 million people are trafficked around the world at any given time. Just to give that some context, the number of people trafficked in the world is about equal to the total population of the state of Florida. Let's take a look at the national numbers. According to the Polaris Project, which operates the National Human Trafficking Hotline, 71% of hotline calls in 2017 were sex trafficking, 15% were labor trafficking, 10% were not specified, and 4% were sex and labor. 81% of the victims were female, while 14% were male. 58% were adults, and 26% were minors. Of those callers identifying citizenship, the majority were United States citizens or legal permanent residents. Human trafficking cases have been identified in all 50 states, and out of the 50 states, Florida is ranked third in the nation for reported call volume to the National Human Trafficking Hotline. And within the state of Florida, Palm Beach County is ranked third in the state for reported call volume to the National Human Trafficking Hotline. Here are the 2017 statistics from the Palm Beach County Human Trafficking Task Force. The total number of cases that were received or investigated was 57. The total number of suspects arrested was 16. There were a total of 48 victims that were identified or recovered, and 14 of those victims were under the age of 18. 42 of those victims were United States citizens. Why Palm Beach County? We have a thriving agricultural industry. Think about our western communities and all the farming that happens there. We have a thriving tourism industry. People love to come to Palm Beach County. We have great weather, and there's always something fun to do here. Palm Beach International Airport serves over 6 million travelers annually. And we are also very close in proximity to the Miami International Airport, which is a major hub for international travel. Palm Beach County includes 47 miles of Atlantic coastline. We have a very diverse demographic, extensive highway systems. We also have a significant number of rehab facilities and sober homes.
Now that you've learned what human trafficking is, how do you identify a victim? Here are some warning signs to look for in a person's place of work or where they live. Are they free to leave or come and go as he or she wishes? Are they under the age of 18 and providing commercial sex acts? They're in the commercial sex industry and they have a pimp or a manager. They are unpaid, paid very little, or paid only through tips. They work excessively long hours or unusual hours. They are not allowed to take breaks or suffer under unusual restrictions at work. They owe a large debt and they are unable to pay it off. They were recruited through false promises concerning the nature and conditions of his or her work. There are high security measures that exist in the place of work and/or living locations. For example, opaque windows, boarded up windows, bars on the windows, barbed wire, or security cameras. They may be living at their place of employment, or they live with multiple people in a cramped space. Here are some common behavioral signs you may see in a victim of trafficking. They may show fear or anxiety. They may seem depressed, intimidated, submissive, tense, nervous, or paranoid. They become unusually fearful or anxious after bringing up law enforcement or are distrustful of authorities. They avoid eye contact or lack emotional responsiveness. They may act as if someone else instructed them or gave responses that seem scripted or rehearsed. They may allow others to speak for them or are accompanied by a group or a controlling friend or boyfriend who speaks for them. And they may resist assistance. Here are some physical signs you may see. They may appear malnourished. They may show signs of physical abuse, such as bruises, scratches, scars, missing teeth, lacerations, burns, and carvings. They lack health and dental care. They may be dressed inappropriately for the weather or venue. They may have tattoos or other forms of branding, usually on the neck or lower back. The tattoos may say things like daddy or property of or for sale. How many of you have or know someone that has a tattoo? When you ask someone about their tattoo, there's usually a story or some significance that goes along with why or when they got their tattoo. Most trafficking victims did not have a choice about what type or where their tattoo is placed. Traffickers are tattooing as a form of branding. If you were to ask a victim of human trafficking about their tattoo, they may not be quick with the story and may show some of the behavioral signs that were just discussed. Other warning signs that you may see are multiple victims coming from the same home address or location. Claims of just visiting and inability to clarify where he or she is staying or what their address is. They may have a lack of knowledge of their whereabouts and or do not know what city he or she is in. They may have a loss of sense of time. They may have numerous inconsistencies in his or her story. They may have false identity or travel documents. They may have few or no personal possessions. They may not be in control of his or her own money. They may not have financial records or have a bank account. They do not understand the language, the culture, or the laws of the United States. So now that you know what to look for, sometimes it's not that easy to recognize. Here are some barriers to identification and rescue of victims of human trafficking. Victims are often isolated. They are often moved frequently to avoid detection. Victims often comply with their traffickers and don't seek help. Usually this is because they are fearful for personal safety and the safety of their family. They may be fearful of deportation. They may be dependent on their trafficker. They may blame themselves and have shame, guilt, and feel hopeless. Some victims do not speak the native language and are unable to communicate with potential help. Oftentimes, victims don't see themselves as victims. They blame themselves for getting into the situation that they are in. Sometimes they're in love with their trafficker, who they identify as their boyfriend. Oftentimes, trauma bonding exists. It's a mix of violence and tenderness that is used to alternately degrade and then elevate them, which results in a dependency that is equal parts fear and misplaced affection.
Here are some questions you can ask if you suspect someone is a victim of human trafficking. Can you leave your job if you want to? Can you come and go as you please? Have you been hurt or threatened if you try to leave? Has your family been threatened? Do you live with your employer? Are you in debt to your employer? Where do you eat and sleep? Do your family or friends know where you are? Do you have easy access to your personal identity information, such as your driver's license, social security card, or passport? And if not, who keeps it for you? If you see someone who may be a victim, or if it doesn't look or feel right, call the National Human Trafficking Hotline at 888-373-7888. If the suspected victim is under 18 years old, call the Department of Children and Families at 1-800-96-ABUSE. That's 1-800-962-2873. Once a victim of human trafficking is identified, as you can imagine, the needs are vast. They include interpretation services, clothing, food, legal assistance, medical and dental care, mental health services, substance abuse treatment, and short and long-term housing.
I often say that I was everything that no one would have thought that human trafficking would have been. I had both parents in my household, both parents, my mother and my father. My father had his own business. I was in all honor classes. And so everything that no one would have looked for to see that I could have been victimized by human trafficking was right there. So I grew up here in Florida, Miami-Dade County, where I was just a typical young kid with good grades and a nice lifestyle, so what I thought it was, until I was sexually abused at home. And from that, I became the runaway girl. I ran for attention and I ran for love. I ran for someone just to hear my story. And so in that is where I got caught up in human trafficking. Someone took that vulnerability and they played on that. They played on my brokenness. They played and they manipulated my mind to think that this was going to be better for me. And so I want you all to understand, every night standing on a street being prostituted until I came up with the certain amount that my pimp would require me to have, or just being on the stage, being exploited sexually. I'm reminded of having to sleep with 30 to 40 guys a night. I'm reminded when I called my pimp daddy, not because I didn't have a father, because in the moment that I was looking for a male to stand up against all of the other males and stand up and tell me how important I was, unfortunately, my pimp did that. And so yes, I called him daddy, because even though I was walking down the street prostituting, he served as a protection. He always assured me that he wouldn't allow them to hurt me. Most times when people say, Shanika, how did you get out? I ran in running from abuse, and I ran out running from abuse. I ran away from my traffickers, because sometimes to get away, you just have to keep running. And that's the way I got out with my life. This is what human trafficking did to me. I'm somebody's kid. I'm somebody's family member. And so when you think about human trafficking, think about a product that's being sold, but that is a human, that belongs to a family, that belongs to a community and to a society. That was me. And so I rally the community to come together, to continue to put things in place so a survivor can know that they can come back and they can gain their life. It was my education, going back to school and gaining an education that gave me a stability in my life. I see myself as an overcomer of human trafficking because I know my self-worth and I know my value now. I know who I am and I know what my purpose is. And in that I say that I'm worth it. I'm worth not going back. I'm worth enough that no one can put a dollar price tag on me anymore. I just want you to be reminded that human trafficking is all around us. Don't think it's not in your community. It's in every community. It's the mold in every community. And so when I say, what can you do? What can you do? You have to get involved. You have to be aware. You have to understand the signs. Don't put it in one category because we'll miss it every time. If we try to label it as just the runaway or the broken kid, then we'll miss your kid. We'll miss the kid that came from a great economical background. We'll miss the kid that came from a household with both families. If we try to only label it for the troubled kids or the foster kids, then you'll miss it because someone missed me. Human trafficking is everywhere. Open your eyes and your mouths. Be the eyes that can see the signs and be the mouth that will speak up for the survivors.
So what is Palm Beach County doing in response? We're providing trainings just like this one to county employees, schools, community agencies, and law enforcement. There are also many direct service agencies that are providing services to victims. Some of them are Palm Beach County Victim Services and Certified Rape Crisis Center and Catholic Charities. Palm Beach County also has its own human trafficking task force, and the Human Trafficking Coalition of the Palm Beaches is very active in the fight against human trafficking.
Thank you for watching. Again, I am Monica Gonzalez.
And I am Tanya Mead.
We hope this training helped you to learn about the crime of human trafficking, how to identify victims, recognize indicators and warning signs, how to make a report, and the services available to victims.
Remember, human trafficking is a crime that is hidden in plain sight, and we need your help in ending modern-day slavery.